So bowl season is upon us. And I will never identify with the people who say there are too many bowl games, because if the options on December 16th are to watch Central Michigan versus Wyoming at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or The View, it's a pretty easy decision, at least for me. I don't understand how people complain about more football being on when more people are off and more people have time to watch more football. Bowl games are awesome. They're great. You get, at least for me, you sit in the Midwest where everything has become gray, and you get to watch kids play football in Florida and Louisiana and Texas and California and places that are warm-looking, Hawaii. It's sort of like spring training baseball, where I don't necessarily care about the baseball. It just sounds warm on the radio. It looks warm on TV. And that's enough to get you through the day. Waking up and knowing that, like, hey, you're going to get to see James Madison take on Jacksonville State today if you want. It's a nice spot to be in. And I hate the idea that there are too many bowl games, because if they were to shrink the bowl games, guess what? It ain't the 6-6 Power 5 schools that are left out. It's the 10-2 group of 5 schools that don't get bowl games at that point. And you want to see people complain about 13-0 Florida State not getting into the college football playoff. Wait until 11-1 insert group of 5 school here. Wait until 10-2, 11-2 Tulane doesn't get a bowl game because they're in the American instead of the 13th best team in the SEC. That is poppycock. So I have no problem with the sheer amount of bowl games. Truthfully, if you're not going to pay the kids, I think everybody should play in a bowl game. Like, what does it hurt to have 15 more practices? Now, some schools would say, like, once you finish your 2-10 season, we're not necessarily interested. And there's only so many, like, desirable locations. There are only so many places that are putting on games where people are like, hell yeah, I want to go to San Diego. Yes, count me in on December 22nd. San Diego sounds spectacular. Not a whole lot of people are like, you know what, let's play in the Missoula, Montana Bowl. I mean, it's just, it doesn't, there are only so many desirable locales and so many places and committees that are interested in hosting bowl games. But I have no problem with the sheer amount of bowl games. So today, I'm going to go through my top 5, I think, most intriguing matchups that are in the bowl game calendar that aren't New Year's Six games. So not your Cotton Bowl, Peach Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and Orange Bowl, the national championship game. So the first one I got is the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. It's Air Force versus James Madison, which, if you said a month ago this is a bowl matchup, like, that is the cat's meow, because at the time Air Force was undefeated, James Madison was undefeated, and was looking like they might not get a bowl game because they're in the transition period. Well, there weren't enough eligible teams. Guess what? James Madison, you're in. And you're taking on Air Force, who started the season 8-0 and then slipped to 8-4, got some injuries. But I told you throughout the season that I thought Air Force was a team that was right there kind of on the cusp of one of those teams that could be the group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six. And that ended up being Liberty, who I told you at the start of the season. Liberty is one of those teams that, because their schedule is trash, can go 12-0, and now 13-0 after winning the conference championship. They're going to play in the Fiesta Bowl against Oregon. That'll be an intriguing matchup that we'll probably talk about later. But Air Force and James Madison is kind of two contrasting, but also somewhat similar styles. Now, obviously, James Madison isn't lining up in the flex bone or trying to run triple option, and Air Force doesn't as much as Navy and Army do. But James Madison, without their head coach, Kurt Signetti, left to go to Indiana, I wonder what they are. And Air Force is always an interesting style, especially in a bowl game, because teams have had the opportunity for a couple of weeks to prepare for that. And that makes those games interesting to me. That's pretty much the only one that features Power 5 schools, for the record, in my top 5. The Holiday Bowl is Louisville versus USC. And really, I don't think that this matchup is as interesting as the conference matchup is. Louisville played in the ACC championship game, and USC finished 7-5 and was viewed as a disaster. And I'm not so certain that I wouldn't pick USC because I think the game gets to become a shootout. And I know Caleb Williams isn't going to play, and I know USC is not going to be all that energized to be there. But I think that USC matches up somewhat well with Louisville. And I don't know that that's a fun reward for the Cardinals that had a really great season and have a lot of reasons to be excited about their future. You go, and San Diego's a nice spot. It's the Holiday Bowl. I mean, it's a somewhat, back in the day, Holiday Bowl, big deal. So it's a different, fun, interesting matchup that I don't know. I might choose USC to win that game. The Alamo Bowl, to me, is insanely interesting. It's Arizona and Oklahoma. OU, I think, felt like they got disrespected all season. And Arizona came on really strong at the end of the year. So those are two programs in differing spots. Oklahoma's going to be without Dylan Gabriel, who's entered a transfer portal, so see, I'm done. Who was a big part in why they were the number 12 ranked team in the country. But I think that's another one of those matchups that, like, what do we learn about the Pac-12 in that matchup? Is Arizona I think they finished the third best team in the Pac-12. Are they the third best team, the fourth best team? I think many would argue Oklahoma is the second best team in the Big 12 this season before they go to the SEC. How does that stack up? I think you learn a lot there. And Oklahoma's seen some turnover, not only from Dylan Gabriel. Jeff Levy, the offensive coordinator, has departed. I think you learn a little bit, but I also think you get an eye towards the future for both of those programs in the Alamo Bowl. Citrus Bowl is Iowa, Tennessee. Talk about opposite ends of the spectrum on the offensive side of the football. Tennessee wants to move as fast as humanly possible. And Iowa is hoping to gain a yard. Tennessee's trying to score 50 on you every time out. And Iowa's hoping they can stay on the field long enough to give their defense a rest so they can save the day one more time today. It is as wild as contrasting a styles as I think you will see. And I don't know if styles even is the word as much as it's contrasting levels of competence. That Tennessee makes no bones about it. We are trying to score a touchdown on every single play. That's the point of the game for Tennessee. It's every time we snap the ball, we have called the play that we think is most likely to score us a touchdown. And Iowa is doing all they can to score a touchdown. They are trying to score a touchdown a couple of times a game. Out of 133 FBS schools, Iowa finished 133rd in total offense and number 1 in total punting yards. And yet, their defense may be good enough to keep them in the game. I would take Tennessee, and I haven't looked at what the over-under is yet or anything like that, what the spread is. But I'm telling you, Iowa's defense is good enough to keep them in the game until the fourth quarter, I think. And I mentioned last week in the Power 5 Conference Championship preview, Iowa's thought process, like, they make no bones about who and what they are. Our job is, can our offense outscore your defense? Because we're going to do our damnedest to make our defense outscore your offense, which is as back-asswards a way you can play football in 2023. But they made it work. Now, they made it work against a bad schedule. But they made it work. And so it'll be interesting to see that up against an offense that's pretty good in Tennessee. And finally, I got the Sun Bowl. Oregon State versus Notre Dame. Oregon State is in as flux as possible. New head coach, but the new head coach isn't going to coach the bowl game, which is wild to me. He's going to take they elevated their defensive coordinator from defensive coordinator to head coach when Jonathan Smith left to go to Michigan State. And basically said, like, hey, I wish I could be there for the bowl game. Well, you can, bro. You're the head coach. But it's going to take the time to build the staff, hit the transfer portal, recruit hard, etc., rather than coach the team in the bowl game, which is wild to me. Like, it's a free 15 days of practice you can lead, and it's a opportunity to get a rep under your belt to coach your team where it doesn't mean anything. If you lose to Notre Dame in the Sun Bowl, who gives a damn? This game is much more important to Notre Dame than it is to Oregon State, or at least it should be, because it's another opportunity for Notre Dame to get a big-time win when they weren't necessarily, like, for the first, 6 weeks of the season, 7 weeks of the season, they were pretty relevant, super relevant, and then kind of fell off the map where they're not even really in the discussion. Nobody's paying a whole lot of attention to the Fighting Irish. You get a win over Oregon State in the Sun Bowl, it goes a long way in helping kind of tame the perception around Marcus Freeman that he doesn't win big games or they're outmatched when they're on equal footing with an opponent, yada, yada, yada. Oregon State's was going to be playing with their third-string quarterback and a guy who's not going to be their coach next year. It's kind of primed and ready for you to grab a victory there and kind of placate the naysayers that say you're not the guy to lead our program, et cetera, et cetera. And it also gives you an opportunity to kind of showcase it appears as if Notre Dame's going to be in the transfer portal pretty hard for a quarterback because Sam Hartman has been playing quarterback in college football since, like, Obama's last year in office. So I think it gives you a chance to kind of showcase to some guys that are in the portal, like, hey, look at what we can do, because we're interested in being explosive offensively, and if you can do that in a game against Oregon State where they're kind of ripe for the picking, I think that goes a kind of a long way for Notre Dame to at least start the ball rolling towards 2024. So that'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all our great college football content pumped out here at Saturday Glory. If you are listening on the podcast, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel and getting us in front of more college football fans. And that's always a really great thing. Back at it tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel here on the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory.